If one had told me years ago that a League of Legends animated series would be one of the most multifaceted and thought-provoking stories I'd ever experienced, I would have called them crazy. Arcane is a story that in many ways can be described best as unexpected. From every angle of Arcane, it excels in so many areas that most average people would never have anticipated from such a franchise. Its artistic backgrounds, its use of color, the fluidity of its animation, its voice work, and so many other factors. But most importantly, the construction of its characters. Arcane is undeniably a character-driven narrative. While it has brilliant world-building and well-paced plot progression, what truly sets it apart from its contemporaries is its diverse and substantial group of characters. And while many of them are brilliant, the two that stand as my complete and utter favorites are Silco and Jayce Talis, a pair of individuals who both walk an emotional and soul-crushing path of expansion and sight for a future they believe is truly deserved for both them and their people. Within the story of Arcane, many people point to some of the more obviously strong character dynamics as their favorites. Jayce and Victor, Vi and Jinx, Silco and Jinx. And while they would obviously be correct in saying they're brilliant, the dynamic that truly left me with some of the most thought is the one between my two favorites, Silco and Jayce. Although they only ever interact on screen once, that one defining moment opens up so many possibilities of thought provocation and points to so many parallels and dualities they share as both leaders and people. One a conqueror and one a visionary. One regarded a hero and one regarded a villain. One who sacrificed everything and one who couldn't give up the one thing that truly mattered most. The bitter reality, though, is that all of these terms describe both of these men perfectly. Piltover, literally breaking down to over the Pilt, is just as its name would describe, a metropolis that prides itself on not becoming intimate with or caring about the fate of the Pilt that stands below it. This city is one determined by its bright blue skies, light brown buildings, and technologically alive and beckoning aura. Piltover is a city for the future, a city that truly sees itself as the pinnacle of all that stands above or below. And the most obvious target of that is the Undercity. The Undercity is a broken one, through and through. As opposed to Piltover's blue skies and brown bricks, the Undercity is determined by murky greens and dark, shadowy blacks throughout all of its locations and architecture, standing as a representation of a lack of ability to evolve, a lack of opportunity to progress, to better either itself or its people. Between these two hubs of life stands the River Pilt, the water of disgusting, putrid, and unlivable toxins, standing as the line separating these two extreme representations of life and fulfillment. And it is in this river that the man known as Silco was formed.
Ever wonder what it's like to drown? Story of opposites. There's peace in water, like it's holding you, whispering in low tones to let it in. And every problem in the world will fade away. But then, there's this thing in your head, and it's raging, lighting every nerve with madness. To fight. To survive. And all the while, this question lingers before you. Have you had enough? It's funny. You could pass a lifetime without ever facing a choice like that. But it changes you forever. For that, I thank you, old friend.
Silco is a conqueror. From the slums of the Undercity, Silco was a man who was raised on nothing and was forced to become comfortable with a disgusting society that ate him alive and spat him out chewed to shreds. In this world, Silco's convictions were formed. Convictions to gain what he believed he truly deserved. Convictions to seize himself a future. To conquer. To sacrifice. To take the overcity that looked down upon him and all who surrounded him. And most importantly, to overtake all that ever abandoned him. Before the events of the main story, Silco considered Vander to be a brother who would stand by him to the very end. But along the way, Vander, like many, abandoned him in the dream that determined their entire existences, drowning him in the slum water that would become the embodiment of everything he despised and ripping out all of his parts. This incident would be what would leave Silco with the eye he so detested, the physical extension of both his sin and abandonment. In a cruelly ironic way, the waters that took away his ability to see clearly are where Silco reached his clearest enlightenment. Beneath the waves he was drowned under, he was able to truly see the world for what he came to believe it was, a cruel and abandoning place that would spit up all who didn't walk along its allowed trajectory. Two eyes, one normal and one blackened, one colored a natural serene blue, and one colored an unnatural beady orange. This orange would become one of the most showing factors of who Silco is at his core, a shining, overtaking light in a pitch-black abyss, a light that convinces itself it is the only one that knows the way and can see ahead in the pitch-black darkness, a light that attempts to overtake, consume, and conquer all the darkness that clouds the vision of those who refuse to see its purpose. This is Silco, this is Zon, and this is the kingdom he so desires. A kingdom that shines through the history of pitch black, that painted the world he and so many called home for so very long. As time progresses, this eye becomes no longer the only testament to Silco's convictions and blinding aura. It is here we meet Powder, an innocent and kind-hearted girl, who is to both herself and others nothing more than an unreliable failure of a jinx. A girl who, despite her attempts to try and assist, despite her purest and most human desires to simply be wanted and have a seat at the table, has anything but these traits be defining to her existence. In their dispute against the thugs who attempt to steal their treasure, to many of her discussions and arguments with her sister Vi, it is soul-crushingly apparent that this girl, no matter how much she yearns for a place, does not have one and may never find one. This is until the tragic encounter between Silco, Vander, and Vi, where Powder's sickeningly strong desire to prove herself is shown on full display, scarily for once resulting in her first victory and small span of self-assurance. Very quickly after Powder's bombs are set off, though, she comes to the heartbreaking realization that due to her innate desire to constantly prove herself capable, she robbed Vander and all her other close friends from the planet. This moment is what comes to define her, and what comes to define Silco. In the heat of events, Vi rejects Powder and her dreams of finding her place, coming to scream into her the fact that she had now come to agree with the notion that Powder was indeed nothing but a useless jinx, a jinx that will bring nothing but failure and destruction to all she tries to help. This serves as the catalyst as to what truly severs Powder from everything she knows and loves, forcing her to realize that for her to live, she had to kill the part of her that saw she needed them more, sending her down the path towards the seat of Jinx. After Vi walks off into the pelting rain, as the fires that Powder caused continue to incinerate all in its path, a broken yet conflicted Silco appears, seeing before him a crying, heartbroken little girl, a child cloaked in the same water that also drenched him, broken to her core, abandoned, lost, and alone. It is here that Silco's true humanity shows and finally rears its pure head for the first time. Silco, despite having the perfect opportunity to kill her and finish his mission of dragging the man who abandoned him into a final burial, can only bring himself to embrace and hold the crying child, seeing nothing more than a small innocent girl who is so very much the same as he is, a girl broke and left with so many pieces, caressing her and holding her tight, becoming the symbol of everything she could target her sadness towards, to become what she never had before, to finally give this girl a purpose, a place, and a seat at the table of life. As time progresses, Powder completely abandons the title she once lived by, fully giving herself to the name of Jinx, becoming Silco's finest henchman. Although she acts in often needlessly barbaric and cruel ways to prove her own self-worth, against many of his peers' wishes, Silco constantly shows her affection and favor, coming slowly to adore her. When she messes up, he forgives her. He holds her close. He touches her head. He lets her explain her sadness. He doesn't hate her or scream at her or drill her failures into her skull like many would. He understands, he cares, and he loves her. After a while, Vi returns to the picture. Upon discovering this, Jayce is sent into a frenzy, wanting to hurt her like she hurt her that day. Silco's reactions to this discovery come emotionally and frictionally, but they aren't felt out of worry for himself, nor out of hatred towards her connection to Vander. They're nothing more than the anxious, helpless screams of a broken man, afraid to lose the child who had now become the most important center of his universe.
1,000 times I've imagined this moment. Never like this. All we ever wanted. The boy didn't even haggle. And what do I lose but problems? Oh, it all makes sense now, brother. Is there anything so undoing as a daughter?
Jayce to Silco is purity. She is what he adores. She evolves into something so much greater than his dream. She surpasses his ideal, becoming in so many ways an extension of everything he sees in himself, and something that he wants to see prosper so fervently. While a hint of his plan definitely mirrors her, it is in no way what primarily drives his love for her. He adores her due to simply how much he triumphs that in his mind. So when offered by the Council the opportunity to gain his Kingdom of Zaun in exchange for simply the life of one person, his daughter, Silco agonizes and gradually refuses their offer, realizing now what drove Vander, understanding after all this time what made Vander abandon their dream and lay down his thirst for blood. It's because of what this plan is, and what it is simply so much greater than. It is love. It is because of what one simply cannot bring themselves to sacrifice. It is that he never wants to see her lose like he lost when he played. He never wants her to pain any further over what could have been. Just as Silco is defined by his eye, being an orange blinding light in a completely black abyss, Jayce to him is what he believes himself to be to others, a light that guides and illuminates a way in the black path forward. She to him is a guiding star, a guiding powder, his light to shine his way in the torrent, the lighthouse that helps him find land again. What makes him realize the validity of what Vander stood for, what he held dear, and what he sacrificed everything to protect, and what could have been. Just as Vi is to Vander, Jayce is to Silco. She is so much more than a goal. She is love that transcends a goal. She is him, and he is her. This, in the end, is what slays him. Jayce, in a frenzied state, while being unable to choose between his words or Vi's, shoots him and takes his life. The life of the conqueror of Zaun, and all he can do with his final breath is look this girl in the eye and utter the words of what they could have been. The words of her ghost.
I never would have given you to them. Not for anything. Don't cry. You're perfect.
Within a frozen tundra lies a mother with her child. Suddenly, one who controls the power of magic arrives, and using this arcane power saves both this mother and child from the tundra that would soon take their lives. This is the foundation of Jayce Talis. This moment serves as the groundwork for the forward march that would both shape this man and the state of the entire world. Jayce Talis is a man driven by one sole desire, the want to spread magic. From his youngest days being saved by its abilities, Jayce sets out on an arduous quest to bring the salvation that was brought to him by this power to all who walk upon this planet. This desire is what gives him the air to breathe, and what can rip out all his parts. Early on, Jayce is introduced through a series of fast-paced wild shots along the course of Vi and company's heist, being the target of their thievery. In many cases, ones who have their entire lives' work stolen from them would be met with nothing but sympathy, but that cannot be said true for Jayce. Before Piltover ever allowed the use of magical powers, Jayce studied them profusely, sacrificing hours of sleep and years of passion to pursue the salvation for the sake of others. So when this man is discovered by the city he calls home, and is brought into question about this research, having his ability to work be stolen from him, that to him was almost as ending as a death sentence. Honestly, even worse than that. Though luckily for him, just as he wanted to become a savior to others, one again becomes a savior to him. Victor is a man born from the Undercity that Piltover claims to despise, having only one functioning leg and many physical illnesses, but more than enough drive and intelligence to make up for that fact. He becomes the voice that works alongside Jayce, and helps him regain the footing to stand again, helping him make the breakthrough and figure out with assistance from Mel the wondrous power of Hextech. Hex meaning magic, and tech meaning technology. The scientific breakthrough that would come to serve as the catalyst for the world's greatest progression. To stand against Jayce's progressive ideals is the kind-hearted yet opinionated Heimerdinger, the leader of the School of Magic and one of the head members of the council that lead and govern Piltover. Heimerdinger is one who has experienced the lethality of magic within his days, using those experiences as the basis for his ideals and standards, even if in the process, through the best of intentions, he loses a bit of his touch with humanity, no longer being able to fully comprehend the limitations of human time, life, and stability. Being showcased best, when off the cuff, not caring what invention they made him, he recommends Jayce and Victor continue studying Hextech and its capabilities for a further decade. Although he isn't entirely wrong, just as Jayce is, Heimerdinger is flawed in some aspects of his thinking, not even comprehending whatsoever that such time is not allowed for all members of this equation. As this expansion of Hextech progresses, Jayce is pushed forward into the light, becoming the poster child and golden boy of this new revolution. Despite the fact that this operation should have always required the work and face of two men, Victor fades from prominence from the eyes of the public, falling further into the rabbit hole of his illnesses. Along the way, Jayce is sought after by the council, and most specifically Mel, to take a seat at their table and become a member of their congregation, evolving this once almost banished, meek scientist into a man bearing responsibilities he neither desired nor probably should have ever possessed. These new responsibilities take hold of Jayce, changing the shape of his convictions and forcing him to begin making difficult and regretful decisions he would have never made otherwise. Decisions such as painfully stabbing the man he deemed his hero and mentor in the back, Heimerdinger, by calling for his early retirement, a decision he had to make for what he deemed to be the necessity of progress and human life, concepts Heimerdinger had become alien to throughout the course of his long existence, and the most conflicting decision being undoubtedly in regards to the future purpose of Hextech. Hextech, in both Jayce and Victor's mind, was a scientific road they paved for the single and pure purpose of saving lives, so when dealt the hand of potentially needing to use said creation for the purpose of destruction, unlike what a Jayce earlier in his life would do, he contemplates and anguishes over whether or not to pursue this newly opened road. Victor, seeing Jayce even entertain such an idea though, stands as one of the most insulting and faith-breaking actions Jayce could have ever made in his mind. Jayce in Victor's mind was an extension of him, an extension of the same dream for peace, because in his mind, his dream was meant to be his, and to now see that dream even be debated to be tossed away, breaks Victor, sending him on his own path of desperation. Returning to people he declared not worthy of his consideration earlier in life, in an attempt to save the short existence he still had, perfectly mirroring the regretful options that Jayce considered to choose as well.
Is that what's really bothering you?
He was my mentor, Mel. And I betrayed him.
Everything you said about him was true. My family cast me out, and yet part of me still loves them. Heimerdinger will understand eventually. It's your time now, Jayce. No more red tape. You can bring Hextech to the masses just like you've always dreamed.
First, I have to save Victor.
Where is he?
I don't know. He disappeared. He does that sometimes. No sign of Caitlin either.
The Kiraman girl?
It's just... never mind.
Hey, we'll get through this. I'll stall the council, but they'll soon need their leader. In the meantime, try not to lose your nuts.
Though unlike many, Jayce is all too aware of the darkness of this fact. He is constantly aware of what he is debating to sacrifice, the people said sacrifice will affect, and the elements of himself that would be lost such a decision be made. These options Jayce takes, though, don't bring immediate solution to his conundrums. All the paths he take in the here and now bring about nothing, and this is why Jayce turns to find a form of instant gratification, not out of a sense of pride or want for destruction, but out of a pure sense of needing to find justification for what he's done so far. Being in the bloodline of a family of hammersmiths, Jayce turns to physical labor and creation as his outlet, developing his signature hammer. Sadly, though, this hammer in search for validation would lead Jayce very quickly to his darkest day. Inspired by the actions of the Undercity and spurred on by Vi, Jayce attempts a small-scale war against the Undercity, raiding one of Silco's workstations, beginning immediate conquest and subjugation of those working there, destroying many with his newly attained hammer, to the point of even killing a small child accidentally. More than any moment so far, this is what defines Jayce in the here and now. While Jayce for the majority of his life was determined by his purest and earnest desire to spread magic and attain peace, this new Jayce becomes defined by the unsalvageable blood that he alone spilled, the scarlet blood coating his once clean hands.
Am I interrupting? Remember the Distinguished Innovators competition?
I remember you notching gears in the carriage over.
They started cranking the engine and the whole thing was rattling. I thought a loose cog was gonna take someone's eye out.
At least you didn't throw up.
Everything made sense then.
You have to destroy it.
I know.
The Hex Core. I can't do it. You have to. Please.
What about your disease? Without the Hex Core?
Promise me.
Okay. Okay. I promise.
We lost ourselves. Lost our dream. In the pursuit of great, we failed to do good.
This fact absolutely breaks him, though not in the conventional sense of a complete breakdown or abandonment of his entire identity, but in a scarily mature approach, cutting himself off from his new rabbit self, and slowly begins to return to his original convictions and ideals. Although this change may be quick, it is evident and necessary in writing the story of the life of Jayce Talis and what fully spurs him on to make his final great world-changing decision. Jayce contacts Silco, and meets up with him looking over both Piltover and the Undercity. Two conquerors, one spurred forward by a pure mentality of peace, and one spurred forward by a desperation for validation. Two sides of the same coin. It is between the encounter of these two conquerors that peace is offered from one hand to the other, a peace that a Jayce even one day earlier would have never even considered. It is only within the sea of carnage he creates he truly realizes the validity of what it is he is fighting for and against, completely recontextualizing the entirety of his standard in regards to both the Undercity and Hextech. Silco sees through this regret, but chooses not to spit at his offer. However, Jayce makes it clear that the peace he offers will only be given if Silco hands over the thing truly most important to him, his Jinx. Although Jayce now stands for once again good ideals, it is unchanging that he at his core is a conqueror of the system, a conqueror of magic, and now a conqueror of the heart of his opposition. It is only through these newfound realizations that Jayce gains the necessary clarity to speak against the Council, offering the same peace he offered Silco. Now though, not through any closed doors or clenched teeth, now an offer made from the depths of his purity, with complete transparency staying true through its delivery. Jayce manages to convince the Council of his proposition, and as they all raise their hands in agreement to his transparent offer, he gives a pure smile to Mel. A smile of conquest of his failures, and a smile made out of a pure elation for the immediate future that he now sees in front of him. Though, just as he was now transparent, so too was the window that showed them the outside world, and through that window comes hurtling towards them the embodiment of every warning they ever received, crashing through the glass and ending their final attempt at salvation.
Perfect place for an ambush. And you without your hammer.
I was reminded recently of what brought us together in the first place. The threats beyond our walls.
This city has a short memory.
Progress.
Far be it from me to stand in the way.
Free trade routes, blanket amnesty, unrestricted access to the Hexgate's sovereignty. You really think you're in a position to demand all this?
I give you credit for your stunt. Boy, didn't think you had the stomach. But the big display followed by a request for parley. You're tipping your hand. You're afraid.
I am afraid. Today I got a glimpse of what war between us might look like. Your people wouldn't stand a chance. The Council couldn't care less. I'm trying to save you from annihilation.
Well, well. Not the fresh-faced Academy pledge, are you? You want peace, this is the price.
You'll discontinue the production of Shimmer.
Half there already.
Return the gemstone. And I need Jinx. She has to pay for what she's done.
They weren't her crimes. She was working for me.
Believe me, if I had it my way, it'd be you rotting in Stillwater. But we can't make a deal with a snake and cut off its head. We both have our shitty parts to play. Get me Jinx, and I'll give you your nation of Zaun.
In the dark of night, surrounded by a city of progress, two scientists indebted to said progress achieve their greatest success, discovering the path to the world's evolution, the revolutionary and life-changing power of Hextech. At the same time, a man whose ability to grasp said progress had been taken from him experiences his greatest success, losing his laboratory, his achievements, and the one he called brother. Gaining from these events a girl which he can adore, a girl he can call his daughter. Years later, above this same city of progress cloaked in sunset, these two men finally meet. Two men tasked with the dream of salvaging their societies. Two conquerors with their entire cores defined by this dream. This is Silco and Jayce, a vigilante and a victim. A pair who, without realizing it, by interacting with the world that surrounds them and the people they hold close, walk along paths in life that perfectly mirror one another. Within a sea of archaic mindsets that use the failures of the past as justification and not approach progress, these two are both constant forward thinkers, ones who dream infinitely larger than they ever should, but push forward despite that fact, becoming the opposite of what they originally were through the march of their crusades. Jayce, by taking on the responsibility of proving to his peers through persistence, partnership, and pure vision what is truly necessary for the future, hoping they knew they had everything, slowly evolving to conquer said responsibility, overtaking his opposition by voting out the voice that stood against him in the council, Heimerdinger, losing for a period aspects of his humanity in the process, and Silco, by challenging Vander, killing him and presuming that Vi is dead, proceeding to fully take over the Undercity for the sake of his kingdom of Zaun, that he believes is both necessary and what his people truly deserve. Slowly over time, thanks to Vi's reappearance, becomes broke and left with so many pieces, to the point where he slowly loses and gives up his sense of conquest, gaining copious amounts of humanity along the way, sacrificing all of his dreams and his title as a conqueror for the sake of another, his daughter Jinx. These two men, through every step and turn, both parallel and dualize one another perfectly, having these aspects become factors that determine their trajectories from the day they're born to the day they die, both wanting nothing more than a future for themselves, and a future that the whole world can embark towards. One who wanted the world to hurt like they hurt him that day, and one who saw others lose like he lost when he played.
What could have been